God here, and welcome to the Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoiseth and Dave Dabbah.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. This is week number 10 of your National Football League season. That is Brad Hoiseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I am Dave Dabbah, hanging up in Northern California. Have we got a tremendous show for you this week? Now, of course, as you all know, we were off last week. We got caught up in, if you will, election fever, but we are back at it this week. Super excited to talk to you about the National Football League. I can't wait to get some rips in on Mitch Trubisky, one of Brad Hoiseth's quarterbacks that I'm sure he thinks is going to be in the National Football League Hall of Fame someday. But Brad, as we sort of come into this week 10, how is it that Anthony Lynn is still a head coach in the National Football League?
Well, I mean, they're just renting a stadium. They're renting a spot in the NFL, and the Chargers and Anthony Lynn is just renting a spot as a head coach because I think I saw the stat that now in the last 2 years the Chargers are 3-15 in games, one-score games. They let another one slip away. I mean, their quarterback looks like, how is this? The quarterback could be the rookie of the year, and he hasn't won a game yet, if I'm not mistaken. So, the kid looks spectacular. But every time I seem to watch a Chargers game, they get out in front, and then Anthony Lynn decides to go into a shell and try to salt the game away instead of just doing what got him there. I mean, and so I think he's probably come to the end of his tenure there in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and personally, I hate to see like a great rookie season by a quarterback, just sort of be washed away by a coach that can't seem to rally his team together. It is disturbing in so many ways. But the Chargers are sort of just being the Chargers. Last night on Thursday Night Football, we all saw what happened with Phillip Rivers, and I joke about Phillip Rivers a lot, as you know, Brad. I make jokes about his arm and gravity, and how ugly his throwing motion has become. And heck, even the announcers on the game last night were talking about it as well. And yet you've got this guy that still threw for, over 300 yards last night in Thursday night's game and won the game. And, and that team is, absolutely heading in the right direction. And I'd like to point out that Anthony Lynn is not the head coach of the Colts right now.
Yeah, I think I talked about both the Titans and the Colts because they're both in Brad's Baker's dozen, and I believe I had the Titans ranked, a spot or two ahead of the Colts. But those, once you get between teams, really 8 and 12 or 13, there's those are interchangeable parts, and the Colts still don't strike me as a team that are really going anywhere in the playoffs. But I think we saw that they're a really well-coached team, and they have an absolutely spectacular defense. And the Titans they're not that good of a football team, and they cannot get a stop on third down at all. And Phillip Rivers is the kind of guy, he kind of thrives on those games, and he always has his entire career. He's a good competitor. He's old, but the Titans don't have a very good defense. They don't put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and so the Colts kind of dominated the last 30 minutes of that game.
Yeah. and I just want you all to know, Brad and I had intended on doing this podcast and recording it on Wednesday, and that didn't happen. And I'm sure, Brad, we would have both gotten this game correct.
Absolutely. Talking about last week, we were off, but you and I both picked games, and I think we both went 3-2 on our own games last week. So it wasn't, not all was lost, but like you said, it was an interesting time last week with the election going on and all the coverage that got, and now you got this explosion of COVID, and so we just took the week off and hopefully we'll get back after it this week and have another good week.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that I didn't see coming, as we were preparing to do the picks last week, was that Saints Tampa game. I mean, like, where did that come from? Did we actually see the real Tampa Bay show up and see the real Saints show up, or was this just some sort of just random act of silliness by the Buccaneers?
No, the Saints are a really good team, and maybe perhaps one of these shows you can roll tape on my preseason Super Bowl prediction there, Mr. Dabbah, when I told you it was going to be the Chiefs and the Saints. And, if I remember right, it was one of those things where I just threw a bunch of stuff at the wall and you hope something sticks. But I think the Saints are a really good football team, and at times they can look really good. And, every once in a while you just got somebody's number. And I'm not a big Bruce Arians fan. I don't think he's a great football coach, and they looked entirely unprepared for that game, and the Saints just took them apart from start to finish. And I think in 2 games now, they've outscored the Buccaneers something like 72-30-something in the 2 games they've played. So, the good thing about the playoffs is that, that doesn't really mean much because it's all about matchups. And if the Saints are to get somebody else in the playoffs and lose, that's a team that Tampa wouldn't have to face. But if they have to face one another, you got to look at New Orleans and think they're the favorite to play if they play Tampa Bay again.
Yeah. I'd also like to point out that my pick to win the Super Bowl, if we went back and we rolled that tape, was a team that is really just a game out of first place right now in their division. And despite everything that's happened to them, are still in the hunt. And I'm talking about the Dallas Cowboys. All right, Brad. I had to slip that in because it's embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. Let's go ahead and move into the top 10 games of this National Football League season of week number 10 that we think it's worth actually spending some money on. You are up, Mr. Hoiseth.
Yeah, and on a side note, I got 2 teams that I'm going with my first game here, Eagles and Giants, and they're in that same division with the Cowboys. And by the way, the Cowboys are a game out of first. They're also a game out of last, so nobody real good there. But anyways, I got the Eagles at Giants. The Eagles are a 3.5-point favorite. No matter what you think either of these teams, this is a big game. And, they met 3 weeks ago. Philadelphia eked out a 1-point win in that game. The Giants had a 21-10 lead in the fourth quarter before they collapsed. Daniel Jones and the Giants turned the ball over 3 times in that game. I see this being another close battle. The Giants have a very good defense. If they can stop Daniel Jones from turning over the ball, they still have a shot at winning the NFC East. I've seen improvement in New York every week, and I don't think their coach team, for some reason or another, they keep playing hard, and you don't see the time from teams that are not very good. But the Giants are a team that really have only played 1 or 2 bad defensive games all season. It just seems like more of a field goal game to me. I like the extra half point on the line, so I take the Giants and the 3.5 points against the Eagles.
Yeah. Looking at this game, I was like, leave it to Brad to start off this week with this particular game. The worst division, almost historically, and probably will end up as historically the worst division in the history of football. And we have, bashed on this repeatedly over the course of this season. So I'm not going to go too much deeper on that. This Giants defense is, actually, starting to play better. But when I sort of just look at the coaching staff in Philadelphia, and I look at Carson Wentz, what he used to be, and I sort of it's just so hard for me to believe in a game where there's not going to be any fans in the stands, where it's basically going to be sort of a practice. That's what a lot of these games are like. If they ever turn the fake fan noise off, which I've seen a couple of the broadcasts do. It's like practice. And I just got to believe that this Eagles coaching staff, which is far more experienced, is going to figure out how to take down the Giants by well over 3.5 points in this one. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that with the NFC East, I know we beat on it a lot. They're really bad teams, but what it means is that all these games are big games, and so this game is as big to them as the Buccaneers and Saints was last week to those two teams, right? And so, unfortunately, we got to talk about it, but it's just two bad football teams that are playing probably the biggest game of the season so far.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to, one of those games where you're like the point spread seems like it should be higher than it actually is. I mean, if you consider how bad the Patriots played against the winless New York Jets. So we're going to talk about the Ravens versus the Patriots. And that game is in Foxborough. The Ravens are a 7.5 point favorite heading into that one. And when I was like looking at this, I was like, that's it? They're only a 7.5 favorite. It's like at this point, all of the Bill Belichick is a genius stuff needs to sort of be thrown out the door when you look at who's actually on this roster at this point. I mean, for God's sakes, earlier in the week, I heard there was a rumor that the New York Jets organization was actually trying to get the NFL to recount the score of that game, actual hand recount like they're doing in Georgia, which would go on and on and on until the Jets actually won a game. That might be the only way that the Jets can actually win a game is to have a hand recount of a score. That's how bad the Patriots played in that game. And so when I look at this Ravens team heading into Foxborough, knowing that this is a down a New England football team, Cam does not look – I mean, Cam looks like a quarterback that you're paying $1 million a year to. I think maybe the Patriots got that right in terms of how much they're paying him at this point. So with that being said, I am definitely going with the Ravens, and I'm happy to give up the 7.5.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one, and for multiple reasons. There was some really weird that happened in Ravens camp this week. Some comments by Mark Jackson made some comments, I guess, in either team meetings or coaches that the other teams know what plays we're calling. Basically, I think what he said to the coaching staff is you're not calling a very good game. We're predictable, and our offensive sets are predictable. And if it isn't Lamar Jackson making plays, nobody else is making plays except for the tight end. And so, and if he's saying that, I have a sense that there is some tension in that locker room, coaching staff. And you say whatever you want about the Patriots, they looked this last week, and they won. And so, they still have a decent defense. You couldn't have noted the first 30 minutes last week. I like the extra half a point. At the 7.5, if it was 6.5, I'd probably take the Ravens, but it's pretty close. I'm going to take the Patriots. They're playing at home. They're a much better football team when they're at home. And so I still think there's a little juice left in that tank. I don't think there's much, but the Ravens' offense is not that scary. They're it's not. They haven't been scoring the 30, 40 points a game like they were last year. I think there is some reason. I think they kind of came to a head this week. So I'm going to take the Patriots and the 7.5.
Yeah, and totally get it. I mean, like this Ravens team is the very definition of predictable at this point. The thing about it is, the way, if Lamar Jackson does get loose, it is so predictable that he's, so hard to bring down that I'm certainly willing to give up the 7.5 for that reason. Plus, on top of it, Brad, I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but Des Bryant has come out of his 2.5-year hibernation and is back in the National Football League and is now a member of the Ravens. And he, actually spent spent about a week and a half on the practice squad before he got called up. So that should at least solve some of the 10-yard button hook patterns for Lamar Jackson, because I think when Dez gets past about 10 yards, he starts to get a little tired at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I mean, he's at a 2.5-year hiatus, but he also had 2-year hiatus before that where he didn't do very much. So I'm not quite entirely sure that's a great fit. He didn't do anything the last 2 years he was in Dallas except sit on the injured reserve. So in my opinion, Dez Bryant, and I know this is probably not going to be favorable to a lot of people, I think he's one of the most overrated players that's ever played this game. He's a guy that had about 1.5 years of good years, and that was it. And we heard a lot about him, but we didn't see a lot about him. And so as Dez Bryant went, so went the Cowboys, and they didn't go very far. So anyways, sorry about that little rant, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go into my number 4 game. It's the Broncos at the Raiders. The Raiders are a 5-point favorite, one of Dave's favorite teams. The Raiders, they're one of the really feel-good stories of the year so far in the NFL, and I think most people admit they're kind of a bubble team as to whether or not they're making the playoffs in what is a really deep AFC. The problem with the Raiders is they haven't looked good when they've played defense teams. Las Vegas is teams, good defenses all season, and they lost all 3 games. This week they get what is one of the more underrated defenses in the league in Denver. The Broncos are finally starting to get healthy a little bit on offense. Noah Fant practiced this week. Tim Patrick's getting healthy. Phillip Lindsay's back. This is also a game between 2 of the worst turnover differential teams in the league. Vegas is a -4. Denver is a -7. The reality is Vegas is still a ways away on defense, and I see this game being closer to the 5-point spread. So I think it's a good game. I still think the Raiders win, but I'm Broncos and the.
Yeah. Hey, Brad, so let me ask you a question. And I know what your answer is going to be on it, but I'm still going to ask it anyways. Who's got a better offense right now, the Atlanta Falcons or the Las Vegas Raiders?
I think that's pretty close, actually. I mean, they both can score points. Falcons don't have defense. That's a good question. I don't know. I would say probably. I think Raiders a bit more balanced.
Yeah.
I think they got a better young quarterback than the Falcons.
Yeah. So when I sort of look at what happened to Denver in the last couple weeks, and what happened when they played against Atlanta. And then I take a look at this Vegas team, which I think actually, I'm always hit or miss on John Gruden. I think there are games that John Gruden does a really excellent job getting his team motivated for, and there are other games where they're not. They seem to be not as motivated, but still with the team with sort of the talent that they have on the offensive side of the ball, they're still able to win those games. I mean, highly motivated when they went into Kansas City and won that game. Not so motivated when they beat the Browns. So as I sort of look at this Raider team, I think Denver, as you pointed out, a huge rival of this Raiders team. The glitz and glamour of Las Vegas for certainly for the first time when these teams are coming there. Also should be noted, though I know we're in the midst of COVID, but still, I just look at this Raider team, and I think they're going to find a way to win this game, probably by a touchdown. It's going to be a shootout, at least on the Raider side of the ball. Still, I have all sorts of questions about Drew Luck at this point. That have yet to be answered one way or the other. So with that being said, definitely going to take the Raiders in this one. And as always, I'm happy to give up some points, and I'm giving up 5 points. But like I said, I think they're going to win by a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked this game because I always find the Raiders to be kind of an enigma. You never really kind of know what to expect from the Raiders. They can look spectacular one game and then they just fall asleep the next game. I think under Gruden and company, they've become a little bit more of a consistent football team. I just think this is kind of everything Denver has to play for right now. I mean, they don't really have anything else to play for. Their season's over. If they can, spoil somebody's day like the Raiders, I think you'll see them play hard. I don't know that Denver can win the game, but I just thought that the line, given the fact that the Broncos do have a really, really good defense, I thought the line was a little bit high at 5.
Yeah. Okay, so the next game we have for you is and I couldn't believe it. And it's the Saints at home against the 49ers, and you're only giving up 3 in this game, which just seemed like a shockingly low number when you consider all of the injuries of the 49ers. Heck, I would have been happy to give up 10 in this game and taken the Saints. I mean, like, if ever there is an easy game to pick in the National Football League in Week 10 of this season, it is this week. So there's a timeout. Brad's checking the actual number.
Dave, the line 10.
It's 10. Okay, there we go.
Where did we come up with 3?
I don't know.
You got to start this game over with.
I know, like if it was 3, definitely. But so with the line being 10, as Brad just pointed out, it's still an absolute no-brainer to me. I mean, like, I'm not even sure who's going to be the starting quarterback. I'm not sure who the backup quarterback is going to be, and they absolutely need a backup to the backup on this roster at this point. The injuries have been devastating. It is shocking to me, actually, Brad, that this isn't a 15-point spread. And of course, normally we would talk differently about a Kyle Shanahan led football team. And a couple weeks ago, we certainly were able to see that Kyle, even despite all of the earlier injuries in the season, was able to piece together a couple wins. But at this point, at this very juncture of the season, with the amount of injuries that this team has, it is just it's not even if they could cancel the rest of their season, I think they'd be happy to.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand what the line opened at 6.5. It had to have something to do with Drew Brees. Yeah, I know that he had kind of gotten dinged up a little bit in that previous game. That thing moved up to like 9.5, 10 in a heartbeat, and I at 6.5, I'm looking at it. I'm going, am I missing something here? I mean, is there a COVID outbreak in New Orleans? Because I just see a bunch of third-rate college football players out there right now for San Francisco. I mean, they're so banged up. They have, without George Kittle, without your quarterback, without, most of your offense, I don't see how they're going to generate the kind of offense to keep pace with a team like New Orleans, who's got a lot of weapons. So I'm with you. I say take the Saints. I say lay those points.
Yeah, I mean, like the 49ers are going to be down by 20 at halftime. I mean, that's sort of the reality of this game. All right, Hoiseth, what's your next pick?
One of your favorite games, the Seahawks at the Rams, and I'm going with the over/under in this game, which is 54.5, which I found to be somewhat low. This is 2 teams we've talked about a lot. I've been saying for weeks that I still think Seattle's a pretender. They just don't have any defense. And I've also been saying for weeks that I think Jared Goff is one of the worst 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. Something's got to give, right? The Seahawks give up 456 yards per game. It's really kind of inconceivable when you think about it. It's 37 yards more than any other team in the league. I mean, how bad are they? I mean, really. The last time the Rams played them, Goff himself was 28 of 39 for 318 and 2 touchdowns. You know how I feel about him. The 2 times they played last season, the totals were 67 and 64. I see no reason to think that will change in 2020. I say take the over at 54.5.
Yeah, this is also a no-brainer on the weekend. I would put this one into your parlay if you're playing one. It's like Russell's going to get his. Goff against a couple weeks ago for about 3 quarters, the Seattle Seahawks defense actually showed up in a couple different games. And that was it. And I think the team at this point is sort of like this COVID outbreak in America. We're obviously heading down the path of trying to solve the problem by just allowing everybody to get it. And the Seattle Seahawks defense, they've given up in a very similar way, and they're just trying to outscore everybody. So I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but Brad just read the numbers, and these numbers do not lie. And when you watch the Seattle Seahawks play, you realize that obviously it's a talent issue at this point. And their ability to slow people down is just non-existent. And yes, as bad as Goff has been, Brad, I know how much you dislike Jared Goff. It's also one of the cool things for me, knowing that you're in the Southern California market and that you have to deal with Jared Goff 24/7 throughout the National Football League season, which means Goff is everywhere, I'm sure. And it's your game that your local game that you have to suffer through for a portion of every Sunday. That always makes me happy because I know at some point during Sunday I'm going to get a text from Hoiseth. The Goff is terrible. I look forward to it. So the over is an absolute no-brainer in this one.
Yeah, and everybody thought last week, here's Seattle, they're getting their safety back. Oh, things are going to be all better. And then I think Josh Allen threw for like 300-something yards in the first half. I mean, they just don't stop anybody. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They don't stop anybody. And in this particular game, I don't see them stopping the Rams. The only thing that would stop the Rams are the Rams themselves. And I don't need to go into any more about how I feel about Jared Goff.
All right. Speaking of Josh Allen, he's our Keanu Reeves sort of segue, if you will, the Replacements. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie with Keanu Reeves, and the Washington Sentinels, I think was the name of the football team, which I think would be a great name for the current Washington football team. So Josh Allen is heading into beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, to do battle with the Arizona Cardinals in this one. The Cards are a 2.5-point favorite heading into this game. These stats, Brad, you might want to double check them all because that also seemed sort of odd to me as well. That being said, when I watch Kyler Murray play, I don't think I've ever seen like a player that was sort of molded specifically after a video game character. I mean, he literally looks like he was born out of Madden when you watch Kyler Murray play. And so, it's really an interesting thing for me. I've been down on the Bills. You've been up on the Bills. I've been up on the Cardinals. But I think this Buffalo Bills team is turning things around. And if you're going to give me a couple points, then the way Josh Allen has been playing of recent note, I have more faith, believe it or not, in Josh Allen than I do Kyler Murray at this point.
I think it's a really exciting game. I think you got two of the better young quarterbacks in the league. And really, when you think about it, who does Kyler Murray most remind you of as another in the NFL? To me, he reminds me of Russell Wilson a lot. Yep. Except he's a little bit better runner than Russell Wilson is. Russell Wilson's not going to take off and run a lot. Kyler Murray can go 40 yards in a heartbeat. I've seen the Bills play a couple of teams with running backs this year, and they struggled to stop those kinds of guys. So I'm going to take the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are on a roll. I think they're one of the better young teams in football, and I'll give those points at home, Arizona. But I do think it's an intriguing match between two of the better young teams in the league, and that's one of the marquee matchups to watch this weekend.
Yeah, and I think when you you look at a team like the Buffalo Bills that live in Buffalo, have to deal with the conditions of Buffalo, and then they're sort of treated to a winter or late fall game in Phoenix, Arizona. That's like a vacation for those people for sure. So it's a really interesting. I agree. This is by far one of the most intriguing games of the weekend. I just think this Buffalo Bills running game is terrible, and what I think is happening is that the offensive coordinator and the Buffalo Bills coaching staff has sort of given up on it at this point, much like the Seattle Seahawks defense, and they're going to focus and Josh Allen's going to throw for 300 plus yards every game. It's going to be predictable in that sense. And I think they're just going to put up big numbers against this Cards team. Probably come down to the last series of the game. That's how close I think this one will be.
All right, my number 2 game is the Jacksonville Jaguars at Dave Dabbah's Green Bay Packers.
Wait, Brad. Does Jacksonville still have a team?
They do. They do. And the Packers are a 13.5-point favorite at home. To me, the Packers on paper just look like a lot better football team. Jacksonville, remember at the beginning of the year, we all thought they just packed it in. They were going on the Trevor Lawrence trail, and then all of a sudden they won their first game. Remember they won their first game? Oh, yeah. How long ago was that?
It was like they won their first game and like the sky was falling. It was like, oh my gosh, Jacksonville's going to the playoffs this year. It's Gardner Minshew.
Right, and they beat somebody good. It was like the Colts or somebody like that. And it was a good win for them. And since then, they've just kind of progressively gotten worse and worse as the season goes on. When it comes to this game, weather is going to be a factor. The forecast is calling for a 70% chance of rain, 25-mile-an-hour winds, potential light snow. And when you look at the quarterback matchups, you have Aaron Rodgers versus a guy starting his second game, Jake Luton, a kid that played from Southern California. Interesting side note here, 2 guys that played junior college football in California, Dabbah. Not sure if you knew that little tidbit. The Packers are 6-2. Jags are 1-7. Haven't won a game since week 1. In the last 5 weeks, they've lost to the Texans, Chargers, Lions, Texans, and Bengals by an average of 11 points. Anybody out there still think the Packers are only 3 points better than any of those teams? Because I do. Take the Packers, lay the 13.5. This looks like one of the easier games of the week for me.
Yeah. Do you? I don't know, Brad, if Johnny Mountain is still on the air in Southern California, but I'm wondering what the weather forecast is like in Green Bay this weekend. Yeah. Regardless of what it's like, this was also sort of an easy game to pick. To sort of pick against Jacksonville. We all know this is the National Football League. And teams, there are matchups, and teams tend to play better against, different teams. But at this point, Jacksonville has re-entered the Trevor Lawrence, battle to draft him with the number 1 pick this year. And I seriously doubt they'll have or put up a strong enough performance to keep the Packers down. Packers are going to win this game by like 17 at least.
Yeah, I thought the kid looked pretty good last week, Jake Luton, and but now you're going into a different environment. Now you're going to face Aaron Rodgers. You can't tell me the young kid isn't going to have some nerves going to Green Bay, playing in Lambeau.
Yeah,
I don't have any faith in the Green Bay defense at all, but I just think with the weather being what it's going to be there, maybe light snow, heavy winds, It just seems to me like kind of a recipe disaster for a young kid, where things get kind of spiral out of control there.
Yeah, and look, Mike Pettin, is a seasoned defensive coordinator. He's it's the old adage, right? You got a rookie quarterback that you're playing against. Not only do you have a rookie quarterback that you're playing against, but you have a sort of a replacement rookie quarterback that wasn't even supposed to play this year. So he's going to blitz the hell out of him. And he's going to show him a bunch of different things with players that are probably going to be out of position at time, but they're going to confuse the hell out of them. And it's just going to be a most likely a really long day for the Jaguars quarterback in this one. All right, Mr. Hoiseth. Speaking of young quarterbacks, my friend, that takes me to my two favorite young rookie quarterbacks in the National Football League this season. That's right. You've heard me talk the praises of Justin Herbert over and over and over again. We've ripped on Anthony Lynn plenty, sort of coming into this, and then we've got Tua and Tua time officially started a few weeks back in Miami. The interesting thing about this game is that I think when I look at this, I feel like the Dolphins are a team that is absolutely playing better as a whole team than the Chargers are, and so why I would pick against the Dolphins and go with Anthony Lynn and the Chargers is really was something difficult for me. It took me a while to sort of analyze this game and sort of lead myself to that point, but I did get there. And, one of the primary reasons I got there is when you look at this wide receiving core of this Charger team and even their running backs, even their replacement running backs, this offense is really potent and it's really, really strong. Herbert's not making a ton of mistakes as well. I don't see, as well as this Dolphins defense has been playing and has been helping Tua win his games, I just don't see that happening this week. I think Anthony Lynn is going to save his job for one more week, and they are going to win this game in Miami.
I don't know why I disagree with you all the time on your picks, because you do pretty well at your picks. But I just went back and I changed it. I can't go with the Chargers. I just can't. Look, they've just kind of lost me. I mean, every week I think, oh man, this is it. They're going to look, and they look good, and they look good, and then they lose. And it happens every single week, and I've just given up on them. I mean, basically, it's a 3-point line, and which means it's going to be a one-score game.
Yeah.
And Anthony Lynn's 3-15 in one-score games in the last 2 years. I think the Dolphins are one of the best young teams in football. I think in the Brad Baker's dozen, I had them in the top 6 or 7 teams. I mean, they're legit. That's a good football team. And I'll tell you what, the NFC East, the Bills had better watch out because Miami can play more than they're really good differently. And the Chargers have many stops on defense, and I just don't think they have much of a coaching staff, and I think they're on their last leg. I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins are rolling. I think they're going to keep rolling, playing at home.
Yep. I can't argue with you on too much there. This is really honestly one of the hardest games to pick this weekend. Super intriguing. I love what I think Tua is going to be able to do in the National Football League. I'm pleasantly surprised by Brian Flores as a head coach. I think he's rid the organization of any of the Adam Gase stuff that was left behind. It will take the New York Jets a good 3 to 5 years to pull that off when they finally make the right decision to let Gase go. So you've really got to give it to Flores. They really are a nice young team, but at the same time, when I look at this, I'm just like, Justin Herbert. I mean, like, this kid is just playing at a level that we haven't seen out of a young, sort of drop back pass quarterback in a really, really long time. He's easily a year and a half ahead of where Josh Allen was when Josh Allen entered the league. I think he's going to start to figure out how to win tight games despite his coaching staff sort of standing in his way. He's a smart kid, so that's why I'm going with the Chargers in this one.
I'm with you on the quarterback. I think he's a really, really talented kid. Here's the one recommendation I would make for him: learn how to slide. Yeah. Because that kid takes a lot of hits, and unfortunately, if he keeps taking hits like that, he's going to be out of the league before he wins a league title. And so,
and you can see it too. Like, he absolutely needs to learn how to slide. But you can see it, like, when he drops back to pass and everything. Like, he's not afraid to look downfield. Like a lot of these young quarterbacks, they get there eventually. But he's not afraid to look downfield. He's not afraid to go through his progressions. Like, this kid's doing everything right except sliding.
That's right. Well, on to my number one game, Dabbah. It is the Vikings at the Bears. And I want to, say ahead of time, I'm 7-1 on Vikings games this year. Because last week you and I did pick some games, and I picked the Vikings, and I won that game.
Brad, you are in fact the Viking whisperer.
Well, unfortunately, they don't have quite a whisperer at quarterback, which is going to be part of this prediction I'm making here, because I'm playing the over-under in this game, which is 45. I'm not predicting any winners here this game. I think it's in all likelihood you're going to see a lot of turnovers. What we have here really, though, is two teams that are going opposite directions. The Vikings, I think, clearly are playing better football, and the Bears have kind of started to look like the Bears. Early on, Chicago was winning close games. The Vikings were a complete hot mess. Now the Bears are losing games, and the Vikings have looked better against some pretty poor defenses. Here's the problem for the Vikings in this game. This is the first good defensive team that they've really faced, since week 2, when they just got absolutely shellacked by the Colts 28-11. The Bears, despite their offense, they still one of the elite defenses in the league. And the biggest factor then becomes Kirk Cousins, who I think is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league when this is a good defense. And he tends to look horrendous during prime time, which is what this game is, a Monday night game. The Bears have seen the Vikings winning in recent, and they understand what they got to go out there and try to do, which is going to run the ball, the Vikings. And it means that Cousins is going to have to make some plays against one of the better defenses in the NFL. Both of these teams love to give the football away, leading me to believe that this is going to be a low-scoring game. So I take the under at 45. I think you're going to see a sloppy game. It's going to be decided by a few turnovers. Games like this, Cousins usually throws at least one interception and puts it on the rug once when he gets sacked. I think Chicago causes a couple fumbles. They kick a few field goals, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of points in this game.
I had originally was going to go with the over on this, but Brad, I got to agree with you. I'm going with the with the under on it. It is Kirk Cousins, as you pointed out, on Monday Night Football. You start there. Who's quarterbacking the Bears this week? Is it Nick Foles? That's point 2.
Hold on, Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles. Yeah, remember that?
Well, that was a long time ago.
No.
Yeah, it was like I've seen Where's Waldo perform better recently than Nick Foles. So I'm not going to get into a whole Nick Foles rant, but This Bears defense is not bad. They do tend to play the run better. Cousins isn't going to have a ton of opportunities to drop back and pass when he does. We all think Dalvin Cook's going to get the yards that he normally gets. So I could see the Vikings absolutely winning this game. But I'm having a hard time seeing as bad as this Viking defense is, and I think they're playing better collectively as a group. So I'm just having a hard time seeing, Chicago put up a lot of points as well. And when you factor all of that in, I mean, you can see a 20-18 or 20-17, game, breakout on national television, as embarrassing as that is.
Yeah, I mean, I look at these two teams. Do you really see either one of them scoring 27, 28 points? I don't see it. I mean, I think if there is a team that's going to score 27, it'd be the Vikings.
Yeah.
But I could also see the Vikings running the ball up and down the field all day long, and then Kirk Cousins throws an interception at the 2-yard line. I mean, because that's what he does in prime time, and that's what we've come to expect as Vikings fans. And so, I think it's, in all likelihood, the Vikings are going to have the ball more than the Bears. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the game. But at the same time, I could see Kirk Cousins turning the ball over 3 times and the Bears somehow win the game, 19-16 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, the Vikings are in an interesting spot, right? Yeah. Hopefully they win the game and they beat the Bears. I was talking to a couple Bears fans earlier in the week, and I was sort of pointing out some of this stuff to them. But, hopefully, if you're a Viking fan and you're the Viking whisperer that, and Brad and I both admittedly are from the great state of Minnesota originally. And, so we're both, big Viking fans. But I just look at this and I think the Kirk Cousin era, no matter what, is coming to a close. And how many more of these like nationally televised games will the organization allow us to suffer through? So I think when it's time to make that decision about extending Cousins' contract, it's just not going to happen. And we'll see him in San Francisco because Kyle Shanahan, for some reason, still believes in Cousins. And the fans here, and I keep telling my San Francisco 49er buddy friends, is not better than Garoppolo, and that's saying a lot. If you have a guy that you just want to hand the ball off, and you can roll him out a couple times during the game, then that's fine. But he's not going to win the big game for you, and I think that's just the reality of the situation. Completely different points.
Yeah, and as I've said many times, he's just not a leader. You can just see it on the field. You see it on the sidelines. It's almost like he's on the sidelines and he's trying to get himself excited. Hey, look, these two teams are, the Vikings could easily be 5-3. The Bears could easily be 3-6, or whatever the opposite is. I think they're 5-4. I mean, they could easily be 3-6. They're not a talented football team, but the one thing they do have is a really good defense. I think if you put an offense around that defense, that team would be one of the better teams in the NFC. But there's just nothing there on offense. Yeah. But then again, you look at the Vikings; they're not a great defensive football team. So I would suspect that Chicago's going to have a little more success offensively than they would ordinarily have against a team that can play some defense. But I just see the teams running in between the 20s all day long and kicking a bunch of field goals.
Yeah, and the Vikings defense has 3 or 4 remaining starters on defense from the year before, and I haven't seen wholesale changes like this on a Viking defense in 25 years. Les Steckel comes to mind. You got to go all the way back for a defense that's played this poorly for the Vikings.
Well, was Les Steckel pre-Jerry Burns or after? I forget.
He was pre.
He was pre, but Burnsy was part of the staff, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was. So anyways, that was for our fans in Minnesota. That one was just for you. All right.
Our super fan, Minnesota, by the way.
Yeah, we do.
Really not happy. Yeah, she was not happy about us not having a show last week, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So, Superfan, we're back. And we will be here throughout the remainder of the season and into the playoffs. That being said, the last game that we have to cover of the top 10 games we think are worth spending some money on this week is the Bucs at the Panthers. The Panthers are, Brad, I believe, 3.5-point favorites, or no, 5.5-point favorites heading into this game. I look at this, and when I think of you being there in Southern California, I think of Hollywood. Brad's always making comments about how quarterbacks need to be leaders. He's seen way too many football movies about quarterbacks and his expectations about what they say when they get in the huddle. He probably watches the program on repeat. So he's expecting like these quarterbacks to all be leaders, which is totally fine. And I look at this and I think, well, Matt Rule is sort of that version of a head coach in Carolina. I mean, look at who he has left on this team. He's getting McCaffrey back, but Teddy Bridgewater, he's got a wide receiver that was with the Jets that's playing, okay. But he's motivated this defense with a bunch of players you've never heard of before to actually play defense. This entire organization is playing way ahead of itself at this point. I believe, as we saw what happened to Tom Brady and with the Saints, and that was at home. I'm on this Matt Rule motivational tour that he's obviously giving on a weekly and daily basis inside that organization. I believe that is they're going to find a way to apply a bunch of pressure on Brady and shut him down in this one. And on top of it, you've got the whole Antonio Brown distraction. And I'm telling you, it is a distraction. And it is affecting this Buccaneers team in a way that you might not imagine it is. And we all know that Bruce Arians is a loosey-goosey guy to begin with when it comes to a little bit of the, if you will, work ethic. I think Matt Rule is going to prove a lot in this game, and the Panthers are going to win. And you might as well take the 5.5 if they're going to give it to you.
Well, I'm going to go psychoanalysis here, Dabbah. Both of the teams had disappointing losses last week, but for very, very different reasons. The Buccaneers had a disappointing loss because they looked just horrendous. The Carolina Panthers actually looked really, really good, and they just lost the game to a really, really good team.
Yeah.
What's worse on your psyche? I mean, if you're the Panthers now, you've seen this happen week after week after week. They play hard, they play above their heads, they lose. I think the Buccaneers are super pissed off. I think they just they want to prove that last week was a fluke. They've got the guy under center that knows how to get that done. And I just think, again, that the Panthers find a way to lose. And I like the way they're playing. I give credit to Matt Rule. They're playing better every single week than I think they're going to play. But every single week they continue to lose. And at some point, the whole house falls down at some point, And I think the Buccaneers are playing for something a little more special than the Panthers are. And I think they want to show that last week was a fluke, that they're a better football team. So I'm going to take the Bucs. I'm going to give you the 5.5.
All right.
How's that for psychology?
That was huge. No need to go back to college and take Psych 101. You get it here on the Gods of Odds for sure. So that's it for our big Gods of Odds show for week number 10 of your National Football League season. Brad, any parting words?
Stay safe out there, people. We've had a really rugged week with COVID. 160,000 cases or something yesterday. I mean, just some crazy number.
Yeah.
Put on a mask. The election's over. Put on a mask. Be smart. Don't go in big crowds. Don't go to big football games. Don't go. Holidays are coming up. I'd hate to have you have one or two less people at your Thanksgiving dinner, right, people?
Yep, I agree. And one other note, when you see the New York Jets ask for a recount of a score after they've lost, you should all tweet the Jets organization and point out that Adam Gase should have been let go a long time ago.
How about the Heater app? Did you mention the Heater app, Dabbah?
We didn't, but we do have their ad running throughout the show. But if you have a chance, do download the Big Heater app. It's an app that allows you to bring together all of your games. You get to put in the odds that you got, and then you can follow those games, receive notifications while you're watching the game, so you know exactly where you are in your betting weekend.
Yeah, another note, too. I understand there's some new Mighty Rip gear coming out, maybe even a Gods of Odds sweatshirt or something for those looking to order.
We are working on our merch section, so probably when you see this video, make sure you check out our big mighty.rip website. You will see a merch button there. I believe the Gods of Odds stuff will be out sometime next week. So make sure to check it out. Lots of really cool stuff in the merch store. Some, I must say, pretty cool things. If you're a basketball or football fan, you'll see some pretty neat stuff there. In addition, do check out the big mighty.rip website. You can find Brad's weekly power. They're really just power rankings, Brad. Brad's Baker's dozen. He says stuff like the Indianapolis Colts are really just pretenders, and then comes back on the show the week later and tells us how great the Colts are. So check that out. Of course, Brad, it's a fantastic thing. We've got some Masters coverage coming up this weekend as well. And
who's your favorite, by the way, to win that thing, Dabbah? Who do you got?
I want to see John Rahm and I want to see DeChambeau do well, and of course I'd like to see Tiger do well. I haven't. I watched part of Thursday's round, so I'm out of it. I'm not paying attention. I've got Fridays being taped, so I don't know where anything's at this point. But what I do know is that Jordan Spieth isn't going to win.
No. My early prediction was Xander Schauffele. But, hey, the most important thing that just finished up, Bernhard Langer at the age of 63 made the cut, became the oldest player in the history of golf to make a cut at a major. That's pretty impressive. The guy shot 4 under the first day at 63 years old. The guy's just an absolute machine.
Yeah, and 2 words for you, mentally strong. That is exactly who he is, for sure.
Something you will never hear with Jared Goff. That's my closing note.
All right. On that note, and I can't wait to get the Goff text this weekend. For Brad Hoiseth in beautiful Southern California, I am Dave Dabbah in Northern California. You have been tuned in to the Gods of Odds. Have yourself a tremendous rest of your sports weekend.
God here, and thanks for tuning in to the Gods of Odds. For more semi-witty sports commentary, please make sure you check out mighty.rip. Okay, go ahead and kill the music now.